I am inspired by this global room that has many sectors represented: researchers, practitioners, policymakers, funders, pediatricians, and students. We may all see these panels and discussions through our own lens, but we are all united in our common denominator that a bright future is ahead for all our kids. So, with this backdrop in mind, it is my pleasure to introduce pioneering neuroscientist Marc Tessier-Lavigne. Marc became the first president of Stanford University in 2017, but he was no stranger to the farm, as we call it here. Marc was previously a professor in biological sciences at Stanford. When he was here, he held the Susan B. Ford Professorship in Humanities and Sciences. He returned to us here at the farm after serving as president of the Rockefeller University, which is a graduate biomedical research university in New York City. Please join me in welcoming Stanford's 11th president, Marc Tessier-Lavigne.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, and good morning to all of you. I'm really delighted that you could all join us today. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Stanford and to the Stanford Accelerator for Learning Summit with the Yidan Prize Foundation, our partners in this endeavor. This summit was designed to bring together thought leaders in education from around the world for forward-looking conversations about the latest scholarship and developments in learning. Learning, as we all know, is one of the most important levers for improving the human condition. Education holds the potential to make individual lives more fulfilling and entire communities healthier and more productive. So investing time and resources to advance the science of learning can have ramifications across society and around the globe. We just started the new academic year at Stanford here 2 days ago on Monday. And one of the messages I always share with Stanford students at the start of the year is that one of the most, perhaps the most important thing they will learn during their time here is how to learn, how to adapt, and how to prepare for lives in a world that is changing rapidly and where they will need to continually take in new information. Learning how to learn is a skill that we all need throughout the course of our lives, and never more so than today when technology and knowledge advance at the speed of light. We're on the cusp of discoveries that have the potential to improve how we design and organize educational opportunities across a person's lifespan. But the science and design of learning must continue to evolve to match the needs of learners at all stages, and especially those who are most vulnerable to falling through the cracks. The pandemic, as we all know, laid bare inequities in quality and access at the heart of educational systems around the world, and it underlined the importance of the work underway to make education more accessible, more equitable, and more effective. This work requires true partnership among many organizations, from K-12 public schools to philanthropic organizations, policy leaders, educational startups, community colleges, and, yes, universities. To be effective, it must be a cross-sector discussion because true change will require the contribution of all these stakeholders. It also requires work across diverse fields. At Stanford, the Graduate School of Education is taking a distinct interdisciplinary approach as it works to combine the science of learning with data and technology. Indeed, the school has engaged the entire university in this project, from neuroscientists who are unlocking the mysteries of how we learn, to technologists working to bring innovation to scale, to social scientists focusing on optimizing systems and policy, to pediatricians with expertise in childhood development. This interdisciplinary approach can lead to transformative new solutions, and that's where Stanford's Accelerator for Learning comes in. The Stanford Accelerator for Learning is designed to be a student-centered effort that leverages the science and design of learning to develop solutions for the challenges facing learners today. Through the Accelerator, our researchers are working with partners to understand the needs of learners and meet students where they are. The potential for solutions, as we all know, is enormous. I see this in my own field of neuroscience, where researchers are uncovering new knowledge of the brain, leading to new tools and interventions that improve teaching, understanding, and the acquisition of skills and knowledge. Researchers are also exploring questions like how humans learn to read, how AI and new forms of data are opening new fields of discovery, and many others. I'm really proud of the work that the Graduate School of Education is leading to bring ingenuity, talent, and collaboration to such an important part of human life. We have found a wonderful partner in this work in Charles Chen Yidan and the Yidan Prize Foundation, which is co-organizing today's conference. Charles is a remarkable businessman and philanthropist who has dedicated himself to improving learning and education around the world. He is shining a bright light on the importance of education as a force for good and on what can be done to reduce barriers to learning. The Yidan Prize Foundation not only honors innovators in education for their important contributions, but is also calling attention to progress being made in improving educational systems and practices. And the Foundation's approach aligns with the optimism that we feel here at Stanford. While there are still great challenges before us, we all know there are also great ideas out there, and we have great hope that innovations in education can help more individuals and more communities thrive around the world. So thank you, Charles, and my thanks to the entire team at the Yidan Prize Foundation who have worked with us on today's summit. Now, before I close, I also want to thank the Hoover Institution for this space, this beautiful space for this conference. The institution is also doing important work in education, and we have a number of Hoover scholars here as part of our agenda today. In fact, I want to thank all of today's presenters from across many different fields. I really appreciate all of you being here today, and the summit will present some truly exciting work and some wonderful opportunities for knowledge sharing. So thank you all once again for being here today. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dan Schwartz. Dan is Dean of the Stanford Graduate School of Education and Professor of Educational Technology. He's been a member of the GSE faculty since 2000 and studies student understanding and representation. He's a leading expert in the ways that technology can facilitate learning, and he was among the first scholars to take findings from neuroscience research and use them to change classroom practices. His scholarly work is extensively cited, and his focus on creating meaningful learning experiences is grounded in practice from his career as a teacher. Dan is also a key member of the university leadership of my executive team. He's been instrumental in our efforts to advance the Graduate School of Education, Stanford's long-range vision for the university as a whole, and indeed the university as a whole. And he's led the effort to bring together disciplines across campus in new and innovative ways, and is driving our broad efforts at Stanford to develop new models of learning. So please join me in welcoming Dan Schwartz.
Thank you, Marc. So Marc just gave my talk, except I'm going to take about 20 minutes. So it'd take a while. But thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here. Appreciate all of you coming, traveling. You're what are going to make this a great event. So thank you. So for this crowd, it seems silly, but I thought I'd briefly remind you why learning is so important. First, I want you to take a look at this image. It shows the sheer joy of learning and teaching. You can see the kids are very eager to participate. And of course, learning is one of the single most important levers available for improving the human condition. It's correlated with nearly every positive outcome you might care for. It is an investment by society for society. So I was given the task of talking about a theory of change. There are many interpretations of theory of change, and for that matter, there are many interpretations of the word theory and many interpretations of the word change. So I decided to talk about the conditions of change instead. And so I believe they are in place for transforming learning. And then after I do that, I will describe a theory for the acceleration of positive impact from research so it can improve learning. And I'll briefly describe how Stanford is instantiating this theory. So as a starting case study, we can consider a profound change that occurred over 150 years, the scientific revolution. So the revolution started with Ptolemy, who described a perfectly organized heaven rotating around an imperfect earth. Then came Copernicus, who also argued for a perfectly organized heaven, the theory of perfect geometric solids, except in his case, the sun was at the center. From there, Kepler proposed that the planetary orbits were not perfect geometric shapes, but rather they followed an elliptical path defined by the sweep law. And then finally, Newton described the causal mechanisms that regulated both the heavens and the earth. So, what were the conditions that enabled this revolution? While there were many, one key was data. So this is an image of Tycho Brahe's meticulous recording of the positions of the stars and the planets. Brahe does not get the headlines he deserves. He recorded the data that enabled Kepler to create a fundamentally new theory. A second advancement was the creation of new technologies. This is an image of early telescope, which advanced our abilities to see the heavens. And of course, there were many other new technologies during this period, like the steam turbine, blood transfusion, and the pendulum clock. This image shows the trial of Galileo, a very famous moment where a scientific explanation of the world based on empirical evidence was set against a religious one based on the Bible. And then finally, ships navigated by the stars. And with the expansion of sailing around the world, there was a strong need to improve navigation. So, what does the scientific revolution of the 1600s have to do with why we are here today? These same conditions for change are appearing in education: improved data, new technologies, the rise of evidence-based decisions, and new practical needs. And so now I'm going to share a few of my favorite examples. So the first is data. It's finally flowing in education. It's always been very sparse, and it's been very hard to tell if you're actually improving things without data. Now it supports continual improvement, and it can reveal what even the trained eye cannot see. So the distracting moving circles you see, these are 500,000 students around the world solving the same computer problem, the programming problem. Each node is a different line of code that students might write, and you can see clusters of students moving between lines of code. When they reach the green circle, they've solved the problem. With this precision data, at this scale, we can figure out why some students get stuck and when to help or not. And this is occurring across the board. A second game changer is technology. Technology offers the prospect of universal access to A+ learning experiences, and it creates fundamentally new ways of teaching. This is an image of a computer simulation. It's part of the freely available Sept library of science simulations spearheaded by Yidan laureate Carl Lyman, who unfortunately can't join us today. Learning through digital simulations barely existed 20 years ago. It's something that's fundamentally new. If used well, students learn science through inquiry. Also, it is a treasure trove of data about seeing how students learn and listen. PhET simulations have gone to scale with roughly 250 million simulation runs a year. For many schools teaching science during COVID, PhET was a gift. I understand, in particular, that Columbia was one of the hugest adopters, the nation of Columbia. So I want to spend some time on this one, the rise of empiricism in education. It's very important. Currently, education is dominated by homemade remedies and historical accidents handed down from generation to generation. I've been dean for a while now, and I can just hear the common refrain. I was taught that way, and I turned out okay. I never say it, but there's a lot of people for whom it did not work so well. And if I dare say, you might have turned out even better, but I don't say that. So the new empiricism emphasizes the mechanisms of learning, which make it possible to address problems that were previously tolerated because it is the way we always did it. And so I chose one of my favorite examples because it involves sleep. In the United States, school days start very early for young adolescents, middle school, junior high, 12-year-olds. This was largely driven by the need to optimize bus schedules, so the buses could be used for elementary and high school students going to different schools later on. It was very hard to break away from this historical accident, even though there were many complaints by parents and students. Ultimately, Stanford faculty, including Rafael Palaio, demonstrated that adolescents were not sleeping enough. At the same time, the neuroscience was revealing the utter significance of sleep for learning. Sleep is when we consolidate memories so that the learning sticks. And so learning is a 24-hour affair. And the adolescents were not getting enough sleep. The evidence finally drove change. Starting this year in California, schools are starting later for adolescents. Finally, navigation needs. No, we don't. This is not a driving force for education. But there is an analog for better navigation in the 1600s. It's the need for new kinds of learning. So let me grab this prop. If you can see what I'm holding, I don't know how many of you recognize what this is. Very good. Pull it out. So it's a slide rule. My students used to say they vaguely remember their parents had one. Now they say they think their grandparents have one. So that hurts. So the slide rule was invented during the scientific revolution based on the development of logarithms. I spent many weeks in school learning how to use it. It is an amazing tool, but my hard-earned knowledge is completely obsolete unless there's a shortage of silicon. This change in what the educated student needs to know took about 400 years past the 1600s. The rate of change is accelerating. Alexa, which could understand a limited set of words and requests, was launched about 8 years ago. Now, Stanford student Mina Lee helped to develop co-author. So the black text was written by a person, and the green text was written by the computer. I'll do it a little slowly here so translators can keep up. So this is written by a person. Now, this green part was written by the computer. Person. Computer. Given a moving target of skills and ability, mastery is not the right paradigm anymore. We simply cannot predict what people will need to know except for narrow, repetitive situations. We need to emphasize preparing people to continually learn as times and knowledge changes. So here, this blue circle comes from a local school district describing what their graduates will learn and know when they graduate. Notice how the school is focusing on things that prepare people to learn, collaborate, and participate in society. There is no mention of math or science or even reading achievement. Mastery, which once dominated our theorizing, is dead. The need for a scientific revolution is upon us. So a key question is, how can universities accelerate the societal benefits of learning research? Universities were not the seat of the scientific revolution. They were largely protecting the previous dogma. So how do we use universities and their phenomenal capacity for research and convening to accelerate change? As Marc pointed out, Stanford is already designed to support interdisciplinary work, for example, across neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and education. But how do we ensure that the good work gets into practice? After the development of germ theory, it took about 50 years before universities taught doctors to wash their hands. Our proposal is to build in 3 features from the start. These are a learner-centered approach, the combination of science and design, and partnerships with stakeholders. So a learner-centered approach begins with the needs and experiences of identifiable groups of learners. Rather than one-size-fits-all, new sources of evidence are enabling instruction tuned to the needs of learners. Here's a great example. Professor Naila Nasir partnered with a school teacher to create a high school course called African American Male Sexuality. Only boys took the course. It was very targeted. Afterwards, Professor Tom D. evaluated the impact of the course and found that it increased the boys' grades in their other classes, and it reduced dropout. This strong learner-centered approach is quite different from a more common curriculum-centered approach, which might instead start with the question of, should we include AI or climate change in the curriculum? So a learner-centered approach starts with the needs of the learner and their particular circumstances. Second is science and design. The model of bench to bedside, where there is a pipeline from basic research to applied outcomes, has not succeeded very well in education. An alternative approach is to infuse efforts with both science and design from the start. So educational products often have very appealing designs. For instance, take a look at this screenshot. It has a nice color. It draws on popular culture. It also uses an appealing play pattern and a strong reward system. But it is disappointing. So I want you to think, what is the interpretation of 4 fish times 2 fish? If it were 4 fish plus 2 fish, I think I could understand it. But 4 fish times 2 fish, do the 4 fish breed with 2 fish and make 8 fish? Right? So this design inadvertently teaches children to ignore the meaning of mathematics. Design is better when it includes knowledge from science. And of course, science also needs design to be usable. If there were time, I would share some unhappy examples of science being applied without design. We need these 2 forms of expertise to work together from the outset of a project if we hope to accelerate impact. So here's a nice example where science and design come together. This is from Professor Susanna Loeb. She bridged research on early reading, behavior change, and behavioral economics with the design expertise that could build applications that are easy to use, easy to adopt, and easy to appreciate. The result was a texting program that delivered tips to parents for helping their preschool children become school-ready for reading. The parents liked it, the children liked it, and subsequent research showed it helped. At this time, it's been used by nearly 1 million families with expansions into other domains besides early reading. We've seen this combination of science and design work many, many times. The third feature is partnerships. Partnerships bring important strengths that keep the work of the university relevant. Partners bring lived expertise to help identify needs and opportunities. Partner sites, such as schools and the pediatric clinic, provide the needed context for design work. You don't design in the abstract. And partners offer a testbed for evaluating the impact of a potential solution. As a school, we've had great success with school research practice partnerships. Not only have they advanced the science, the partnerships have had a tremendous success rate in producing scalable products and policies. It is a rate of success at an overall price that I imagine venture capitalists would find compelling. So Stanford has taken a specific approach to creating conditions at the university for accelerating change. First, we're organized around specific classes of learners. Each of these were chosen because there's both a manifest need and there's a belief that we can make rapid progress. You will hear about 2 of them today. Second, we provide expertise where faculty may not have it. While the combination of science and design can accelerate the development of useful solutions, there are very few faculty who have expertise in both. We provide support where it can round out a team, whether in the science, the design, the data, or the partnerships. Third, we create partnerships that inform and enable research. As mentioned, we've been very successful partnering with school districts using a very specific model of partnership. We need to expand this portfolio of partnerships, for example, to include industries, nations, NGOs. I do invite people's suggestions for the best way to do this. This is new terrain for us. And this leads to the 4th component, which is to build in pathways for scaling. So pathways are going to differ depending on the nature of the discoveries and innovations. For instance, the implication of sleep's role in learning took a policy pathway, whereas the texting intervention took a pathway through partnerships with local schools. Developing a theory of different scaling pathway needs to be an important focus of the effort. We need a theory of change that works. So Stanford and the Yidan Foundation share a commitment to both research and practice. We believe that research can improve educational outcomes. Over the course of today, you're going to hear many phenomenal examples, and we're going to conclude with the announcement of the 2022 winners of the Yidan Prize. I'm very pleased the Yidan Foundation and the Graduate School of Education are able to partner together. It's a very good match. So I want to end by reminding you that we're at an inflection point in what a research university can do to improve all lives through learning, and not just its own undergraduates. COVID has heightened attention and experimentation. Game changers like data and technology and science are already making inroads in previously intractable problems. Global pressures are growing to improve learning, whether in poor countries will be the home to the majority of children by 2050, or for millions of people displaced by technology, natural disaster, or political upheaval. Stanford has prioritized learning as part of its long-range vision for producing benefits for humanity. There is no near equivalent at any other university. It reflects Stanford's optimism. It's rigorous, daring, and relevant, and I hope you are willing to join us. Thank you. So that was a lot. There will be a test of whether you mastered the content afterwards. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce Charles Chen Yidan. Charles and the entire team at the Yidan Prize Foundation have been fantastic partners throughout this effort to convene us here today to learn, discuss, and make connections. I believe in China right now, it is morning and is the start of Confucius Day. And this is appropriate to my introduction of Charles because it is a day of celebrating teachers. So Charles is incredibly committed to education. He says his most important inspiration was his grandmother, who was illiterate. With great fortitude, she lived through war, famine, and poverty, and raised Charles' father to become the very first college graduate in his village. Charles recalls how her love and firm belief in the value of education encouraged him to pave the way for his own educational career and subsequent entrepreneurial success. And more recently, he has become an excellent author. I commend both of these to you. Charles earned a bachelor's degree in applied chemistry at Chamberlain University. He went on to obtain a master's degree in economic law at Nanjing University. And then he became one of the core founders of China's internet pioneer, Tencent, along with his high school friends. Charles launched the Yidan Prize in 2016 with a mission to create a better world through education. We are honored to share his grand vision. And I want to thank Charles, and I want to thank him for being here today. So Charles, welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much, Dan. Dear President Marc Tessier-Lavigne, Dean Daniel Schwartz, distinguished guests, partners, and friends, online and in person, welcome. We are delighted to be here today. This is the first time the Yidan Prize Foundation is partnering with Stanford University. Our goal is big and bold: to shine a light on important issues in education. In 2014, I was honored to be at Stanford as a visiting scholar. This time, I'm returning as a humble learner to explore how we can energize the potential of all learners. Big ideas inspire change. We see that very clearly in the work of our laureates. I'd like to share 4 of the key learnings we take from them. First, inclusive education is a must. From early childhood to adulthood, in every country in the world, all learners must access quality education because education is the key to sustainable development. The UN estimates the global population will soon exceed 8 billion. More than half of that population growth by 2050 will come from countries of Sub-Saharan Africa. This poses immense challenges to the region. Our 2021 laureate, Professor Eric Henryshek, is set to launch an African fellowship program, training young researchers to carry out robust research that can inform education policies in Africa. These local researchers will drive systemic change in education, unlocking the path to sustainable development and the potential of learners across the region. Second, we must recognize education begins from birth. Research shows that 90% of brain development takes place in the first 1,000 days of children's lives, well before they start school. When we make early learning joyful, we set students up for lifelong learning. We see this in the work of BRAC, founded by our 2019 laureate, Sir Fazley Hansha-Abad. BRAC brings quality, play-based learning to communities in low-resource settings, helping marginalized children reach their potential. Sir Fazley will always be fondly remembered, and his philanthropic and educational legacy will live on. Third, for children in school, we need to make sure no one is left behind. Our laureate put learners at the heart of education and meet them where they are. Our 2021 laureate, Dr. Lukamini Banerjee, and her team in Platinum introduced the Teaching at the Right Level program. It helps teachers assess and group children by learning levels instead of grade or age. They are helping children flourishing at school by progressing through their learning at their own pace. Finally, as we gather today, we recognize that collaboration sparkles unlimited possibilities. Stanford University has long supported tech startups and innovators, creating the Silicon Valley we see today, supporting innovation that can power change. We believe this is also true in education. Yidan Prize laureates achieve impactful results in their respective fields of education. We play our part in this too. The Yidan Prize Foundation works with our global education community to help scale innovations that work and bring transformative changes in education. Equally important is working together. Over the past 3 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has presented many challenges. We applaud everyone who forges ahead against all odds to promote education, making connections within schools, with communities, and between different groups and regions. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you can celebrate with us this evening. The chairman of our independent judging committee, Dr. Mashura, will announce our 2022 Yidan Prize laureates at the close of the conference and summit. We look forward to seeing the synergy of education, research, and development, sparking real, scalable change in education. Today, we have guests from all over the world: Bangladesh, India, Japan, China, Colombia, United States, Zimbabwe, Ghana, France, United Kingdom, and more. We hope everyone will actively take part in the discussions as we inject new energy into all aspects of education. Thank you.